Hey, we want to welcome everybody to You and the Law podcast show. We want to thank everybody for taking the time to tune in and join another informative topic tonight on You and the Law podcast show. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, Virgil Green, and as always, the man of the hour who goes by the name of Chief Swaggy One, the bearded gray guy with the hat. His He's in the house. He's in the house.
What's up, bro?
Not a whole lot, man. How you doing?
I'm good, bro. I'm good, man. Good to see you, man. And it's getting close to Christmas time, man. It's getting time. Trying to, get in that spirit. And but all good, bro.
It is, man. I tell you what, man. You talk about Christmas, man. I'm hoping and praying that the weather uh, is very clear on a Sunday morning to drive back to Oklahoma City. Uh, and after that, man, it can snow all it want up in Minnesota. As long as I know I'm back in the South, I'm good.
Oklahoma's not the South, man.
No, it's not the South. I'm just saying. I'll be further back where the weather is not cold and snowy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
So
so it's the Midwest, not the
it,
South.
the Midwest. Well, you know what? There was a conversation about that not too long ago. Is Oklahoma in the South? And it's not the South.
It's
It's
not the South.
Midwest. Now, when you get past the Red River, Dallas, you kind of getting into the South. But when you get east, Arkansas, well, that's a question. Is Arkansas and Tennessee, are they the South? Now, the
Hell
Mississippi,
hell yeah.
so you think Arkansas and Mississippi, Arkansas and Tennessee is the South?
Look at the laws.
Well,
Look at the laws
yeah.
of behavior, man. They just voted slavery out of books in Tennessee.
Well, yeah. You're right. Yeah.
They've never had a minority. Uh, Arkansas has never put a minority up in the Senate.
In the Senate, yeah,
Uh, in the United States Senate. So yeah, it's the South, man.
yeah. Well, but Arkansas did, who came out of Arkansas, who had some brother in it.
They still love him, man.
Bill Clinton.
They still love my frat brother, man. Go my brother Clinton. Go my man of
Yeah,
Sigma. Man of Sigma.
yeah. Hey, man, before we get into the topic tonight, man, the election in Georgia, man, people showed out, they turned out, they voted. Uh, Now Herschel Walker can go back to living back in Texas, in Irving, and get the help that he needs, or he can just kind of go maybe do some farming or something, but stay away from politics. He does not even need to run for city council.
Let's move on to the topic for tonight.
Well, and I got one other thing. Obviously, Brittany Griner was released today. That's big, and so
There's a lot
uh,
of people upset about uh, her being released and not the other gentleman, Waylon or whatever, the gentleman,
yeah,
former
yeah,
Marine.
yeah.
We
There's
don't know.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, there's something there. We don't know what's there, and so God bless him and his family, and hope soon release for him. But let's be thankful that we did have one person come home, and hopefully he'll come home soon.
yeah, exactly. Well, hey, Keith, tonight's topic we're going to be talking about very informative topic. Are black women more wrongfully convicted than black men? And when we talked about this here topic for this week's podcast, you know, there are some statistics that show that black women are more wrongfully convicted than black men. Obviously, black men are wrongfully convicted as well. But for some reason, women are wrongfully convicted of crimes that they didn't even commit. And so we're going to be talking about several of those things that happen with women who didn't even commit these crimes, but they spent uh, more than a decade. And one lady spent almost 20 plus years in prison for a crime that her and her then boyfriend didn't commit.
So, Vern, this is interesting that when we were talking about this show, we talked about how surprising that is that there are actually more African American women convicted of crimes more than there are men. And I recall in 1980, being from Dallas, Joyce Ann Brown name stuck out. And Joyce Ann Brown was a African American female who was arrested and convicted for armed robbery and murder back in 1980. Joyce Ann Brown spent 10 years in prison and was finally released. And the thing that really stuck out in my mind about this is that Joyce Ann Brown was arrested based on the fact that a person with her name had rented the vehicle and that was used in the robbery homicide. And even and also convicted based on the words of a cellmate who had a prior conviction of perjuring themselves. So this woman spent 10 years in jail, and even when they arrested the other woman who actually pulled the trigger, and she had informed the district attorney and also the police that Joyce Ann Brown was not involved in this incident, she still remained in jail, in prison. And finally, she was released after 10 years, and Ms. Brown passed in 2015. But upon her release, Ms. Brown continued to be an advocate and a fighter for those who were wrongfully convicted. To this day, Joyce Ann Brown could have been well compensated for the years that she spent in prison, but the caveat to that is she would have had to ask for a pardon. And Joyce Ann's belief was that she didn't do anything to ask for a pardon, so she never received any of the compensation that some people who've been wrongfully convicted, because she said, I didn't do anything, I'm not going to ask for a pardon. But this was the first I recall of a black female being wrongfully convicted of a crime and spending time in jail. This was amazing. She was an amazing woman. If you ever I got a chance to meet her a couple of times. An amazing woman, very strong woman.
Well, Keith, and I think one of the things that I discovered while preparing for the podcast is that, oftentimes these women have families, they're mothers, and they are, charged, convicted, sent to prison. Now their kids have to come to prison to see their mother. And these are women who had no criminal records. They may have just been associated with somebody who was a boyfriend who was out in the streets.
We're not even talking about the you talked about children coming to prison, going to prison to visit. We're not even talking about the large number of children who are born inside of prison. That were born to women who have been wrongfully convicted.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I've got a clip that I want to play that's going to set the stage for the conversation even more, about a lady who was straight out of college, ended up apparently with the wrong boyfriend, and her life changed. And since then, she has gotten out of prison, and she's doing some work to make sure that other Black women don't fall into the things that she fell into.
15. He was in his 20s already. He was a producer, but he also participated in illegal activity. He just kind of took me from my mother and took over. He gave me luxury. That kind of lifestyle drew me in. I graduated from high school. After graduating from high school, I had my daughter in 1991. My daughter's father was still, doing what he was doing. I was taking the money and, doing what I wanted to do. 1996 is when they had an arrest warrant for him. They arrested him. A year later, they came with a superseding indictment. I was included on that superseding indictment. I was graduated from community college because I was going to school to become a nurse. I was on my way to school. I dropped my daughter off. As I pulled into the parking lot of my school, they jumped out on me. Special task force, guns drawn. They locked me up. They took me over to Brooklyn, booked me, fingerprinted me, did the whole shebang. I was able to get out on bail because my charge was actually out of Virginia. So I was going back and forth to pretrial while I was still in school. June 1st of 97, I graduated. And then July 19th, I went to trial. And I didn't come home until 12 years later. I had no idea that I was going to prison because I was the girlfriend of someone in the street. They never caught me with anything.
We were in the courtroom. I'll never forget my uncle, my grandmother. My mom was in the front, and we were in like the second or third row. And when the judge hit the gavel, my grandmother screamed, and my mother was like, 230 months? Like, what are you talking about? I started crying because everybody around me was upset. So I knew something went wrong.
It was hard. My mother was very active with me and my daughter. She made sure that my daughter came to visit me every week.
I never really understood until I started going to the prison to see her behind the glass. And that's when I started to understand, oh, mommy's not coming home. My weekends were spending Saturdays and Sundays in the prison all day, from the time they open to the time they close.
My first year in Danbury, Connecticut, I took advantage of the VT building trades, and then I went from there to culinary arts. I also did landscaping. I got a certificate in that. And at that time, I had only did like 3 years. I hadn't done enough time. And so they denied the clemency. In 2006, I received a letter from the judge. The judge telling me that he was giving me immediate release because they had amended the sentencing guidelines. The same judge that sentenced me is the same judge that released me. It was like, wow, I'm finally free. But I really wasn't free because I still had to go to the halfway house. And then I still had 5 years paper. So was I really free?
So when my mother came home, it was a big, big adjustment, not only for her, but for me, because it was trying to figure out, well, where do you stand in my life at this point? You've missed so many years. I was excited that she was home. I was happy, but it was trying to figure out that balance.
When I left her, she was a baby. So I had made a lot of promises to her that only withstood when she was growing up. So now I come home, she's a teenager. So it took like 2 years for us to get to know each other again, because I thought I knew her from seeing her all the time, from talking to her all the time, not realizing that I didn't know her, and so we rebuilt our relationship.
My relationship with my mom now is very, very good. We've learned how to come together on a lot of things and learned how to talk to each other and communicate better. So I recently got married, and my mother was a big part of my wedding. She was like the lifesaver that I needed. I needed to see that from her. I needed to see that she loved me, I guess. I wanted to see that, and she showed it and proved it in so many different ways.
I actually graduated from William-Patterson University in 2018, and while I was getting ready to graduate, I started a nonprofit organization called A Woman's Worth Project, geared towards helping women like myself that has been through the system get acclimated back into society, help them get their documents and stuff that they need, help them mentally to adjust. When I started the organization and started working on my mission and my vision, I said, there's a lot of women out here like me that still have not disclosed whatever trauma they've dealt with. Being in prison, I've met a lot of women that have their own traumas, sexual abuse, physical abuse. They might have murdered their abuser, but nobody has ever thought about why. You have to get to the root. Knowing that I can save someone's life by telling my story, that's my biggest accomplishment, is doing that.
Keith, I wanted to play that whole audio clip because for people to understand that when, you know, here's a young lady who went into prison, didn't have any criminal record. And even the judge, when he sentenced her, didn't want to sentence this lady, but the federal guidelines said that he had to do so. And as you heard, that same judge is the one who ultimately, you know, was proceeded over her case when, you know, when she was let out of prison because those federal guidelines had changed. And so, you know, the question is, Keith, you know, and I think we may have talked about this before. The system isn't set up to help you. The system is set up with the intent to isolate you. And that isolation comes from Black men and Black women from their families. Now, we know people commit crimes. We're not here advocating for people who go out, sling dope, kill people. We're talking about innocent people who didn't even commit a crime, that now their lives are changed because of a system that is supposed to make sure that that doesn't happen. But we have a system, by all accounts, Keith. The question is, you know, to those who are listening, do you feel that the system is set up with the intent to isolate Black men and Black women?
I think the system is set up to based on numbers. It's to get the numbers. It's not about the quality. A lot of times it's not about the quality convictions. It's about the number of convictions. How many district attorneys or prosecuting attorneys that we know that their careers have started based on the fact of a high conviction rate?
Number, yeah.
What the average person may not be aware of is that a conviction is considered a plea bargain as a conviction, deferred adjudication is a conviction, not just a guilty verdict. Is that's not the only conviction. So when someone says they've got a 90-some% conviction rate, don't think that's every time the system gets a person goes to jail that they've been found guilty. They may take a plea bargain. And a plea bargain is basically, I'm not going to say I'm guilty, I'm not going to say I'm innocent. Pretty much, I just don't want to take a chance on getting a stiffer sentence than I could if I go before a jury. And let me say this, man. The system, I've seen the system be very positive for some, and I've seen the system be very negative for some. But what I will say in the late 80s.
So let me ask you: is that positive for people of color, or is that positive for
the thing that I want? Go ahead, Virgil. I'm sorry.
I mean, is that something positive for people of color, or for people who are not of color?
Well, let me say this, Virgil. What I've seen in my law enforcement career, unfortunately, I've seen at times when it becomes fair for people of color is after the damage has been done. I look at in Dallas, being from Dallas and knowing the history of the Dallas County District Attorney from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, Henry Wade. Mr. Wade took pride in the number of minorities, whether that's black, white, whether that's black or Hispanic, male or female, that he had incarcerated. And, if there was another district attorney after him, they took pride in that. And, when Craig Watkins, who was the first African-American district attorney in the history of Dallas, when he came in and started looking at a lot of the convictions during his tenure, he assisted in having 18 convictions overturned. These were black men that were incarcerated for a long number of years, and some had even served up to 20 or more years in the pen based on wrongful convictions. And so that's what I mean. It doesn't, a lot of times it does not start out positive, but then on the back end. But on that back end, let me say this: and sometimes it's too late. I mean, how do you give someone those years back that has been incarcerated or had their names completely damaged based on false information. And we talk about the criminal justice system being fair. Lady, Lady Justice's scales are balanced. We talk about it being balanced, and that's not necessarily true at all. We've seen it, and we continue to see this more and more on a regular basis. And thank goodness, Virgil, we had a president a few years ago, man, that reduced the charges. Because I remember back in, just like this young lady, I remember there were a lot of females that were convicted and sent away to federal prison based on the fact that they knew someone who was selling drugs, or they had allowed someone to borrow their car, their boyfriend to borrow their car, and they, unbeknownst to them, this person was transporting drugs. And so, thank goodness that a lot of those females were released based on time served and got out. But at the end of the time, but at the end of the day, they were away from their families.
Yeah. Well, Keith, we got a comment from one of the viewers, listeners, states that the system is set up to keep people of color from realizing who they truly are and the power that we pose. That's very true.
Yeah. Yeah, she was saying the power that we possess. I will tell you, and we've talked about this before, Virgil. We talked about how when you are a 18, 19, 20-year-old young man or young woman of color, and someone tells you you are facing 50 years in prison. We know that there's a difference between the sentencing in state prison and federal prison, but someone tells you that you're looking at 50 years in prison. However, if you take this plea bargain and you don't go to trial, you don't fight this, you take this plea bargain, you're looking at 10 years. What do you think they're going to do? Someone who doesn't have finances for legal representation, they're listening to other people, they're listening to this individual that represents them, that is an expert in law. This happens on a daily basis, man. This happens throughout the nation.
Oh, yeah.
Daily basis. And so I want to give this young lady the video that you showed. I want to give her, thank God that she had the courage and the strength. We don't know how many nights she cried and what she went through, but she had the strength to overcome. She was resilient. And now her mission is to help other people. And just thank God that her daughter is still there for her, and I know one of her biggest supporters.
Well, Keith, and I think one of the things that I got from that story about this lady was that she had a strong family support.
She did.
Her mother, her daughter, and other family members. And a lot of times, Keith, Black women don't have that support from their family because of whatever reason it may be.
Well, they're too busy. A lot of times they're busy taking care of others.
Taking care of the kid. Well, they're the
caregiver of others. Their family, their kids. So that's absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Keith, we're actually tonight. We're talking about, are Black women more wrongfully convicted than Black men? And previously we talked about this on our podcast show. We talked about, you remember the movie Mercy. And one of the people that portrayed in that movie was a guy named Anthony Ray Hinton, who spent time in prison, and I want to say it was in Alabama, for a crime that he did not commit. This man spent 30-something years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. And so that got a lot of national attention because of the Innocent Project, and I can't remember the lawyer who was very instrumental in freeing not just Anthony Ray Hinton, but the main character in the movie, Just Mercy, that I believe Jamie Foxx played that character. But that was a true story. And, the same thing that happens to black men happens to black women, but there's not a lot of conversation around how women, just because they're associated with a boyfriend or a friend, they are charged with a crime that they didn't commit. And, you got the majority of our district attorneys, prosecutors are white men. And it's their job to say, well, it's your fault that you got caught up into this, versus, hey, if you didn't commit a crime, we're not going to send you to prison.
But you know
because
what?
now, go ahead.
You know what, Virgil? I'm gonna say this, man. I'm gonna say this and to our listeners, man. For centuries, black women have been treated so bad.
Oh yeah.
And so bad and so disrespectful, and it's are they easy targets for this type of behavior based on the fact that is there a perception out there from the criminal justice system and from the social services system that black women are weak? And I will tell you, hell no, they are not.
Yeah.
You would not have some of the strong men that you have today if you did not have strong black women.
Yeah.
And so, but I do believe that African American women throughout history have been treated. We always talk about how black men were treated and during slavery and things like that. But can you just imagine having your body used for whatever at someone's pleasure and being separated from your kids and things like that? So this feeds into the fact of the centuries of oppression that black women have suffered from, and it continues to be. And then we forget, as sometimes as a country, that we forget that black women go through the same thing, if not even greater than black men, when it comes to
black men.
Being incarcerated, having not, being unemployed, whether it being seen as having a lack of education, a lack of dignity, and things like that. So it is time for someone to bring this attention to how black women are continually treated in this nation.
Well, Keith, you make a lot of good points, especially when you talk about how the criminal justice system treats black women, and the fact that these are women who they may be a single parent, they may have more than one kid, more than one child, and now their mothers or grandmothers are left to raise their kids, and oftentimes some of these mothers or grandmothers are up in age, and
Absolutely.
and now there's other social issues that the kids are dealing with. Now this woman who, once again, didn't commit a crime, she was just associated with somebody who committed a crime. She finds herself in prison. Now she's a victim, and then she gets victimized while she's in prison because of the things that we know that go on in prisons. And you have a lot of women who are very strong, but then you have a lot of women who they're just beat down because of the system and the males that are working inside of the prison take advantage of these women.
See, it's always easy for us to say that people should just step up, wipe off their face, dust off themselves, and get up and just start over again. That's easy for some of us to say. It is difficult for some people to do that. It's difficult for no matter how strong you think someone is. You don't know their story, and so we have to realize that, man, this country, and I'll say this to anybody, this country would not be the country that it is if it had not been. We talk about strong black men, but listen, those strong black men were
They had a woman.
by a black woman.
Yeah.
And women, think about it. When a man decides to walk away, a man can walk away without any
Yeah. He can walk away and just say, "Hey, my hands are done." Yeah.
I don't want to deal with you.
Yeah.
The woman cannot do that.
No.
And so, when you are that single black woman and you raise your kids and now you've been sent away, that is just that's devastating to our society. Now let me say this, Virgil.
And I think, Keith, this is why I made that comment earlier. And for those who probably are just now tuning into the show, that this is a system that is intended to isolate black men and black women. And if the system is not intended to do that, Keith, why do we continue to see decades after decades black women being wrongfully convicted as well as black men?
Well, I think it's the fact that does it come down to a belief of dehumanization, the belief of that I don't register on the same social level than you do. You are beneath me. I think it's all three of those. But I think a lot of it is a lot of times people just don't know how to fight, Virgil. They don't know how to fight. They don't have the resources to fight. They don't know who to go to have somebody fight for them. And sometimes
is it a thing of where they don't know how to fight, or they just kind of give up because they fought?
I think
the system the system is just saying, no matter what you do, we're going to isolate you.
I think it's both, Virgil. I think it's both. I think that people have lost confidence in the criminal justice system just based on, I know in the last 10 years, your average African-American citizen has lost faith in the criminal justice system based on what they have seen. I think that a little bit of the faith has been retrieved since the Derek Chauvin case and Marbury case, but I still think that what you see is a criminal justice system that continues to demonstrate that because a person looks the way they do, they're not valued. And as police chiefs, we've seen that and heard some of the things that people say. Do I believe that in certain systems that black women? I've seen it. I've seen how some of the things and heard some of the things that detectives and things say, at round tables that they say around about African American women. The things that they say about some of these young men that are killed and their mamas begging for information, and you hear things like, "Well, where were you? Where was she before her son got killed? Why wasn't she in his life?" Well, you don't know anything about this woman. You don't know what's going on and things like that. But those are the conversations that people get comfortable in having. And so when you don't value someone and you believe that that's an easy target, I'm telling you, man. You go back and we were talking about this where there were so many women I do know during the 80s and 90s. Actually, I'm sorry, that I recall in the late 80s and the mid 80s to about 2000, where there were a lot of women that were put in the penitentiary, both state and federal, based on the fact that they knew someone. They dated someone. They may have not had anything to do with it. They may have taken some money from a guy that they didn't know the money was taken from, was used in the commission of selling drugs. They may not have known that. They may not have known someone was using their car to transport drugs. But because their name came up or someone said this woman was involved with this person, they were convicted. And there was a lot of tears and a lot of mothers and fathers and families who gave up. So yeah, I do think that black women are wrongfully convicted at a higher level than black men. We just don't follow that as closely as we do black men.
Yeah. Well, hey, Keith, I want to get to a couple of comments in the chat room. One of the comments is that since this is a gender biased society, and race to it, and Black women always end up on the bottom. Um, we got another comment here that states that Black women are treated so badly because we are the backbone of our men. If they can't break us down, they have no problem breaking down the Black man. But when you find a strong Black man, you can you're guaranteed there's a strong Black woman behind him. Got another comment here that ultimately the goal is to keep us separated. It goes back to what I originally said. We are powerful alone as women, but together we are literally an unstoppable force, and they know that, and we don't know it. So, Keith, again, I just think, with tonight's topic, as we talk about, are Black women more wrongfully convicted than Black men? We've got some statistics, some information that shows that, and I want to pull this up before I show this other clip, and see if we can get this here. It's not going to let me show that information, but there's some data that shows that women are more wrongfully convicted than men are, and that the percentage of Black men versus any other race is higher than that of white people.
Do you think that those convictions, are we talking past convictions, Virgil, or are we talking currently under the justice system? So are we talking those convictions that happened previously, say 20, 30 years ago? Or are we talking about current day convictions? Did I lose my partner?
Hey, Keith, I'm sorry about that, man.
All right, man.
Yeah, I was trying to show that those statistics, but it's not going to pull it up while it's going to cut our audio off. But very interesting numbers, and I think you asked the question: do you think was that information?
Is it past tense or current?
Past or current? I think it's current. And it doesn't change a lot over the years. I think the numbers has actually increased more than they have decreased.
Yeah, and these are that we know about. I mean, these are the ones that we know about that
we know about. Exactly. Yeah. And hey, Keith, I got another clip to show it, and this is very disturbing because this lady ends up to be something like 74 years old, and just what this lady went through and her then boyfriend went through just goes to show you how, once again, a system that is supposed to set up to be fair and equal it within all races, that here's a system that I've said this earlier, is set up with the intent to isolate Black men and Black women.
A remarkable story today, and remarkable is the word here, a perseverance in the face of great injustice. Joyce Watkins spent decades in prison for a crime she did not commit because of bad science. A former boyfriend, also wrongly convicted, died in prison. According to the Innocence Project, false or misleading forensic evidence is a factor in nearly a quarter of all wrongful convictions in this country. Erin Moriarty is here with this particular story. Erin, this is just heartbreaking on many levels.
But it was an honor to meet Joyce. What happened to Joyce Watkins and her boyfriend, Charlie Dunn, is scary because it could happen to anyone. Hundreds of people have been convicted because of so-called forensic sciences that are later discredited. And as you will see in this case, it's an error that could take years or even a lifetime to correct.
My family is my life. My niece is my nephew. That's my life.
Late on the night of June 26, 1987, Joyce Watkins drove from her home in Tennessee to pick up her great niece, who had been staying with a relative in Kentucky for 2 months. Almost immediately, Watkins could tell something was wrong and took the child in the morning to the emergency room. The 4-year-old, seen here as she was transferred to Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville, was suffering from head and vaginal injuries and died a day later. Joyce, did it ever occur to you at that moment that you would be accused of her death?
No.
But they questioned you.
Yes. They asked me what happened to her. I told them I didn't know. I couldn't tell them something that I didn't know, because I don't know.
Despite evidence that the child had been injured while in Kentucky, Watkins and her boyfriend Charlie Dunn became suspects after an assistant medical examiner, visually observing the child's bruises, mistakenly determined that she had been injured during the 9 hours she was with the couple.
Everybody just got laser focused on Joyce and Charlie.
Jason Gitchner is a senior attorney with the Tennessee Innocence Project.
It didn't matter that they cooperated with the investigation, that they kept meeting with the police over and over again without a lawyer and saying, we didn't do this. Come take whatever evidence you want.
Watkins and Dunn were both convicted and sent to prison for life.
It took everything away from us. It took us from our families, him from his kids, took us from everything we worked for.
Over the years, they tried and failed to get their convictions overturned. In 2015, while still incarcerated, Charlie Dunn died of throat cancer. Later that year, after 27 years in prison, Watkins was released on parole. What was your mission at that point?
To prove our innocence.
Last summer, the Conviction Review Unit of the Davidson County District Attorney's Office released a report finding that the methods used by the medical examiner have been largely discredited and determined that Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn are actually innocent. When you heard at the hearing last December just how wrong her medical evidence was in 1987 and that it was the main evidence against you and Charlie, how did you feel about that?
Broken, real heartbroken. Because it's something that should have never happened. That was when I was incarcerated.
It took 35 years, and the unwavering faith of Joyce Watkins, now 74 years old. But in January of this year, the court finally got it right.
Ms. Watkins, this charge against you is dismissed. And to the family of Charlie Dunn, the charge against Charlie Dunn is dismissed.
It was a happy day. It was a happy day.
But bittersweet, too. You never got to grieve either. You never had time to grieve the loss of Brandy.
No, I haven't. But I'm going to go and visit her grave in a few months.
Both Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn lost everything they had. Under Tennessee law, Joyce has to first apply for and then get a pardon from the governor to be eligible for any compensation. And there's likely nothing for the family of Charlie Dunn. I think the real takeaway on this story is the fact that there was too much weight put on one witness, that assistant medical examiner, because they ignored all the evidence that this child had had problems in Kentucky before Joyce and Charlie ever picked them up.
But I'm looking at Joyce, who lost such a big chunk of her life. Charlie, who's no longer with us. Will they reopen the investigation? Because somebody did something to this little girl, and it wasn't them.
I think there is a demand for that, but it has been 35 years, and so, you know, witnesses are gone. I think it could be very, very difficult.
And you told us just before we went on there, she was in the process of adopting a child herself.
I think
so. She lost many things.
She did. You know, she owned her own home and she had savings. But I think what hurts her the most is the fact that she was in the process of adopting a child. She's all about family, and I think that's what weighs on her the most, the biggest loss, and that can't be compensated for.
What was she like, Aaron.
Well, I have to.
I'm in awe of her.
The word grace comes to mind every time everyone says that when they meet her. She doesn't appear to have anger. She is just determined. And here's what I loved about her the most, that it wasn't enough for her to be exonerated. Even though Charlie had gone, she insisted he be exonerated as well.
Wow. And you pointed out yesterday, Aaron, the killers still at large.
Well, have never been. If someone killed her and they
right.
don't think these injuries are accidental, that person has never been brought to justice. No question.
Tough story.
Has
Aaron
to
Moriarty.
be compensation here, though, Aaron. That strikes me too. No compensation.
No, well, under the law, she has to
Then
get a pardon first. She has to get a pardon first. And then it's limited to $1 million, which may sound like a lot, but it's not considering all that she lost.
Yeah, it's not. Aaron, thank you very much.
You know, Keith, and I think that was very disturbing on so many levels. And there's a lot to unpack in that clip that we just saw. But one of the things that I want to say real quick, because I know you got a lot to say. The first thing, the lady who covered the story, she said this happens to a lot of people. It happens to a lot of people of color. I wish that would have been brought out. Second thing that really got me was the clipping that they showed said that they were convicted of raping a 4-year-old. The third thing is that a man died in prison for a crime that he did not commit. And to me, the state of Tennessee ought to do the right thing and go back and make this right, because you cannot just this man who lost his life in prison has a family. This lady lost a great niece. She spent decades in prison. That's why I said that here's a system that by all accounts says that we're all supposed to be treated equal and we have the same freedoms and liberties. But this is a system that we are a part of, that the sole intent is to isolate Black women and Black men for crimes that they did not commit. And then when you get out, you've lost everything. This lady had a job, she had a house, she had savings. It just, that is so disturbing, Keith.
Virgil, we don't have nothing to complain about. You do not have nothing to complain about after listening to these two stories. How do you talk about, we can't even talk about how strong our faith is, because can you imagine the strength of that lady's faith just based on the fact that she doesn't look like she has any animosity? I don't know her. I don't know what she thinks about, but it seems as though she has forgiven. It seems as though that she is thankful to be out. How do you do that? I mean, what kind of compensation can you give that person? Why should she have to fill out paperwork to get compensation? And it's been proven that she was wrongfully convicted. See, that's the crap I'm talking about, man. You've got to so in order for you to receive what's due you, in order
you got to prove that you didn't.
You've got to fill out paperwork. Yeah. You've got to fill out the paperwork to prove that you deserve to get this. And those are the things that we're talking about, that people of color talk about, those type of things that, we're supposed to just, oh, she's out, that's behind us, things like that. But how do you say that when these things continue to happen over and over and over each and every day? How do you come back from that, Virgil? I mean, how do you come back? Can you emotionally, psychologically, spiritually? Everybody's not cut that way. Everybody can't overcome that. Everybody can't come back.
No, and the fact that this lady went into prison at at an age that she was, probably I want to say maybe in her 30s, and now she's in her 70s. And the thing that I made this comment earlier, that can you imagine a person, or a woman who has never been in prison, never been inside of a jail, who has worked, never been in trouble, who has worked all of her life, has a house, she's living the life that we all want to live. And now all of a sudden you're put into a system that it is so foreign to you that now you got to learn how to survive inside of the walls, where people are telling you when you can eat, when you go to the bathroom. Your whole life changes. And this is what gets me, is the fact that this is why it is so important for Black people and people of color to get out and vote, especially in your local election, when it comes to your prosecutors, your district attorneys, judges. Because when you put the wrong people in the wrong seat, things like this here happen. And Keith, I have to say this, how many times we have a lot of Black people who have a lot of clout, who have a lot of power and influence. Where are they at when these things happen? Should this also be on the shoulders of Black people who have influence and who have power to make things happen?
I think it is. I think there are those that do. Are there enough of us? Probably not. I mean, could there be more of us? Absolutely. But I think there are. I mean, if you go back and you do your research, there are a lot of African American activists who stand up and bring this topic up on a regular basis. So I gotta say that there are those that do it. But I guess we talk about we could always do more. You can never do enough for this cause. Man, we think about we talk about Madea, the Madea movies, and one that sticks out was Madea Goes to Jail. And of course, as funny as that movie had some, although it was fiction, there was some actual real things in that, where you have someone who went to prison based on the fact that the district attorney or assistant district attorney withheld information. And that's not just limited to the big screen. That really happens in real life. There's a lot of cases that are going on right now throughout the nation where, look at the movie Hurricane. We talk about movies, but look at the movie Life. Although that was a comedy with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence, that stuff actually happens.
Yeah.
And you really just think of the plot of it, how it happened. That's facts, just based on pure hate, based on the fact that people look at numbers as better for, if somebody's got to pay for it, why not you?
Yeah.
And so, I think this was a great topic, and it would be really amazing if we could get one of those young ladies on the podcast.
Well, Keith, that's something that definitely going to try to do, because we can talk about this tonight, we can talk about this topic any other time, but to hear the experiences that these two ladies went through, and you see the different ages. You saw what happened with a young Black female who graduated college, what happened with her. Then you see what happened with a lady who is well established in her community, who has a job, who has a house, who is living the life that she is intended to live, church-going woman. But all of these things didn't matter. And the fact that, once again, they relied on the information of a forensic person who now after all these years was incorrect. And the same thing happened, you know, Keith, I'm pretty sure you remember what happened in Oklahoma City with the former forensic with Oklahoma City Police Department, Gilchrist, how her and then DA, the bow tie man, set out to make sure that they convicted Black people and people of color at whatever cost it was. And this lady was a Black lady. She was a Black forensic. And she, again, even when you think you put people in positions who are supposed to do the right thing, even we don't do the right thing. And I know we're coming up on the last few minutes of the podcast show, man, but you know, this topic of Black women, are Black women more wrongfully convicted than Black men? We saw two stories tonight that
I gave you one at the beginning.
Yeah, and there's hundreds and thousands of them, you know. So, but man, you know, this is something I think we can definitely have another podcast about, and hopefully, you know, reach out and see if we can get one of those ladies to come on the podcast show to talk about their experience, because I think it's real important, the context, and you know, we have a great audience who listen to this podcast every week, and I think they would get a lot out of that.
Yeah, I agree, B. I think yeah, we're gonna have to do that.
Yeah,
we have to keep this subject going.
Yeah,
and pay attention to this subject, because it's this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, again, and you know, Keith, I want to thank everybody who you know, shared their comments in the chat room. We didn't get to all of them. You know, Tony Hollis.
We did. We got all of them.
We got all of them. Okay.
Yeah, we did, man. Hey, man, you're doing better, man.
All right, man. Well, you know, again, man, I just think, you know, I think that, you know, the one thing that continues to carry our podcast is that we come up with topics that are typically not talked about, that are very meaningful, that impact the Black community. And so I just, you know, thank everybody for taking the time out of their evenings to watch us stream live on Facebook Live. And then for those who listen to us on the many other podcast platforms.
You know, we got a good producer too. We're not gonna call her name out, but we got a pretty good producer too.
Yeah, man. She definitely helps. She definitely helps. You know, she helps me when I come up with these topics that you want to. I don't know. You know, I don't know, V, man. But yeah, I want to thank our producer for being that ear, for helping guide us. So, well, hey, man, it's been great, man. But hopefully everybody tune in next Thursday for another episode of You and the Law Podcast Show.
Hey, to our listeners, man, good evening and have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week. God bless you.
All right.